and kind of go into this a little bit more. So this is Terry Dickman, a man cited for illegal dumping in Hillsboro, Texas, without one single witness, without a shred of evidence, and without following the law. Under Hillsboro City Ordinance 6.306, it is unlawful for a property owner or someone under their supervision to allow unsanitary conditions on their land, including the dumping of waste, garbage, or dirt. But here's the problem. Terry Dickman is not the owner of the land in question. He didn't own the property. He wasn't even seen dumping anything. And yet there's no video, there's no photo, and there's no eyewitness linking him to the alleged act. Yet a police officer, without witnessing the act, without a complaining party, and without a proper investigation, issued Terry a citation for illegal dumping. A citation based on assumption, not facts. So let's talk about what the law actually requires. According to Municipal Code 6.307 and 6.309 of Hillsboro's ordinance, before any citation is issued, the city is required to 1. Notify the property owner or person in control of the land in writing. 2. Clearly identify the unsanitary condition and the location. 3. Provide the owner 7 days to correct the violation. 4. And only then, only after failure to comply, may enforcement officers take further action. That's not a suggestion. That is the legal process. So how did Terry Dickman, a private citizen with no ownership interest in the property, become the target of a citation? He wasn't served a notice to remedy. He wasn't provided a hearing, and there was no valid evidence that he dumped anything at all. Under Municipal Code 6.312, a building inspector, police officer, or code enforcement officer may issue a citation, but only when someone is found in violation of the ordinance. Not suspected, not rumored, but found. And that finding must follow the process laid out in Hillsboro's Ordinance 6.309. This is more than a bad ticket. It's a violation of Terry's rights. It's the city skipping the law, ignoring procedure, and using Terry Dickman as a scapegoat for someone else's dirt pile. Citations without due process aren't justice. They're abuse of power. And Hillsboro owes its citizens, including Mr. Terry Dickman, far better than that.
And as far as that dirt goes, I don't give a fuck if it stays there.
Now,
it's not my dirt.
Now, one thing that I read in the police report, that they're claiming that they matched up materials. They're claiming that they had orange, like little flag markers that were in the dirt to locate. Now, you were telling me that you guys don't use orange flags.
No, we use white paint. And then when we're marking up our facility, now the only one that uses them flags is the locators.
Okay, so basically it's not materials that you use.
It's not the same material we use.
Now, what about the crew that was out there working for you? Do they use those type of materials at all?
No.
So at this point, really nobody knows who put this.
I don't know, and I really don't care to this day who's been dumping there. And it wasn't me. And it wasn't any of my guys.
Okay.
And I say my guys, these guys that work under me.
As subs for them.
They're subcontractors. They are their own entity as a company. They subcontract to us.
Okay, so you're only paid to locate. You don't dig. You don't. You don't do any of that. Okay.
All I do is point my finger and tell them what I need done.
So my other question is, they came back with a citation.
Mm-hmm.
Now we talked. Do you ever remember giving up your ID or having them demand your ID?
I never did. I give my business card.
Okay, so they got your name from a business card.
Yes.
So they never even really verified who you were. You could have made those business cards up.
Yeah.
With Joe, John Doe, Joe Cool, whatever, and they would have written that on the ticket.
Yep.
And so they didn't really verify who you were.
I'm pretty sure they got my identification and stuff after they forcibly arrested me.
Well, yes.
They told me that I had a choice, an ultimatum. You have to clean that dirt up. At the end of the day, take this ticket and go before the judge. And I told him, fuck you, I ain't doing that. And I said, I didn't do this. You can't prove I did it. You can't prove to me who done it. And I said, I'm not signing something that's going to give me an admission of guilt because I'm not guilty. And I told them no 4 times, and they tried to forcibly arrest me. The way they grabbed me, I got a pacemaker in my chest. I just had a new one put in on the 12th of March. And I remember this so well because it's my mom's birthday that I had this done at. And it turned out to be that way because I wanted it.
So when they gave the ultimatum and you basically said you weren't getting out of your truck.
Yeah.
Did you open a car door? Did they open a car? Was the car door already open?
Oh, it was open. I was going to shut it and tell them, fuck you.
So you were
Leave me alone, you know.
Okay, so you were sitting in the truck.
Yes.
Okay, now the one with sergeant stripes, was she on the driver's side or the passenger side?
They were both on the driver's side.
Okay, they were both on the driver's side.
Yeah,
okay.
they were trying to get me out of the truck.
Okay.
So I have my boss on the phone listening to the whole thing.
Okay.
He's on the phone the whole time. And he's trying to talk to these people, and they would not listen.
They wouldn't. He's like, this is my boss. This is who you need to talk to. They
would not even
identify,
acknowledge that he was on the phone.
So they weren't even really trying to investigate. They were really just trying to write you a ticket, and then when you refused, escalate it into an arrest.
Yes.
Okay. You were cited for illegal dumping, which we obviously know you were not in the vicinity of or even used the materials, so they obviously didn't do their investigation there. Obviously, they didn't demand ID to write you the citation, which it's like protocol to do.
Yeah.
So they didn't do their job there, and now they're giving you an ultimatum by threat of arrest to get out of your truck,
Yes.
and they start grabbing at you, and you tell them that you're not getting out of the truck, you're not signing it. Now, which one grabbed your right arm?
The younger.
So it wasn't the one with the sergeant stripes, it was Gardner.
Gardner.
Okay. So that means that Sergeant Anderson was grabbing at your left arm.
Yes.
So as she started to grab for your left arm, what transpired? What did you say
I told her
to her?
to be careful because I have a pacemaker and I just had it put in. I said, if you pull that fucking wires loose, I said, that all hell's going to break loose. And I told him, I said, then I'm going to come after you in the city.
Okay.
This is very important. It's my life right here.
Now, according to the police report, you pulled your left arm away when she grabbed that.
Yes.
Oh, so you did. Okay. So that was just to basically protect your pacemaker and your wires.
Protect
He did that
protect my life.
while he was telling them, I just got my pacemaker put in. You can't pull that arm, and she's grabbing his arm again.
Okay, so where the leads go? Do you see
They're
that?
right here.
Okay,
It's
so
right
here, let me
It's
zoom
right
in
my
on this real
heart.
quick. Let me zoom in on that so we can see that real quick.
They're like under his
They're in my
collarbone,
skin.
Okay,
and they go in through a vein.
Yeah, where do they connect? Where do they connect to your arm at?
They don't.
They don't connect
It's
my
the
arm.
muscles that
It's
go
the muscle to the
The
shoulder.
leads go inside his heart.
Okay, so
Connect inside his heart.
so basically, when you pull, it's basically extending that
yeah,
muscle.
if you stretch too far
When
back.
she started pulling on my arm this way, it's actually pulling this away.
Okay, okay.
And so when she started pulling my arm, that's when I jerked it back. And I told her, I said, you gotta be careful. I got a pacemaker.
So you weren't pulling away or resisting to not go to jail or to fight. You were just trying to protect your leads and your
Protecting
pacemaker.
my pacemaker.
Okay. And anybody, I mean, how old are you, Terry, if you don't mind?
65.
So 65 years old. Did you have a heart attack or a stroke or anything?
I had a stroke in 07. And
Okay.
then I went through congestive heart failure, sleep apnea back at 18. And I was diagnosed with that.
Okay.
So I've been under doctor's care ever since.
Okay, so you got
He has AFib.
AFib.
That's
Okay.
what the CHF and the AFib combined. They tried to get it under control with medicine for about a year.
okay. So if you would have been hit with a taser, let's say, and I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying
If I'd have been hit with a taser, that's just
It
the
probably-
city of Hillsboro would be going down.
So, but getting hit with a taser probably would have killed you with all that
It
stuff.
would have.
Yeah.
It would
Okay.
have set this thing off.
So here we have Terry Dickman, an older man, a citizen, and someone who lives every day with a pacemaker in his chest. A device meant to preserve his life, not put it at risk. But on a day in April in Hillsboro, Texas, that life was unnecessarily endangered. Not by a criminal, but by a public servant who should have known better. Here we have Sergeant Dominique Anderson, a ranking officer of the Hillsboro Department of Public Safety. But she's not just any officer. According to the patch on her uniform, she's a certified emergency medical technician. That means she's trained to recognize medical vulnerabilities, to protect life, not provoke injury. But when Terry Dickman verbally protested a questionable citation, protecting his own health and reacting with mere words, Sergeant Anderson chose escalation. Not compassion, not de-escalation, not the professionalism you'd expect from someone trained in emergency care. She gave ultimatums. She got physical. She did what many says she does. Bully those who speak up, retaliate when challenged, and write citations like it's a scoreboard, not a tool for justice. And it's not just Terry. Ask around Hillsboro. You'll hear the same names, the same patterns. False citations, intimidation, and poor judgment from Sergeant Anderson. Other officers don't hold themselves to a higher standard. They don't respect citizens, protect vulnerable people, and serve the greater good, including Sergeant Anderson. Where's the oversight? The Director of Public Safety, Tony Kane, just looks the other way. Complaints vanish. Patterns go unaddressed. Misconduct becomes routine. Terry Dickman deserves better. Hillsboro definitely deserves better. So it's time to ask yourself, how many more must be mistreated before accountability begins?
Point.
They don't care.
They could have hit you with a taser and carried
Yeah,
less.
they don't care.
Okay.
Them two police officers, one's trying to train the other one, and what I saw was training the wrong way. The way you do this with a situation like this was not with police officers, in my view. In my opinion, they should have investigated this through the code officer. They should have checked all this out first.
Yeah,
They never should have came to me with police.
Okay. Now, are you guys? Do you guys know who the? I know you don't know who that guy was that was out, the code enforcement guy. You don't know his name. We just have a description. I've confirmed through the code enforcement department that he was part of code enforcement. Do you know who his boss is?
No.
It's Christopher Carey. So he's the inspector. Do you know who he works for?
We haven't really checked into this.
The Director of Public Safety, which is Tony Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, guess who the police officers work for? Him. Right. So, and this is all tied in to his department that botched the investigation. So either code enforcement should have gotten it right, or the police officer should have gotten it right. It went through 2 different departments and nobody did their job
Well,
correctly.
the thing about it is, I don't think nobody up there in that whole fucking city knows what their job is. If that was the case, if they did know their job, this would have never happened.
I agree with it.
In part 2, we uncovered the deeper layers behind Terry Dickman's arrest. An older man with a pacemaker, cited and jailed over dirt with no witnesses, no valid call, and no evidence of a crime. But this was never just about a pile of dirt. It was about retaliation, power, and a system in Hillsboro that punishes people who speak up. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Audrey Dickman. At first, she thought I was just another crazy First Amendment guy with a camera. Loud, persistent, always asking questions. But as the documents started surfacing, the inconsistencies began to unravel. The web of misconduct was laid bare. I didn't seem so crazy anymore. I seemed calm, calculated, and dangerously close to exposing the truth. In part 3, Audrey tells us about the moment it all became real. A call from Terry's boss, describing the experience that shook her. A moment of panic and a determined rush to the Hillsboro Police Department, hoping she wasn't too late to bail him out. The story isn't just about violations of law. It's about broken trust, personal pain, and a community forced to confront how far officials will go to silence dissent. In part 3, we bring you the voices behind the headlines and expose even more of what Hillsboro officials hoped would stay buried. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, because part 3 drops soon, and it's the most revealing chapter yet.
BZ Watchdog.